Hello, and welcome to Encounters with Polish Literature, brought to you by the Polish Cultural Institute, New York. I'm David Goldfarb, and I'll be your host.
That was a recent scene from the somewhat touristy center of Kraków under the Adam Mickiewicz monument in the Remisko near the main market square. It wasn't always that crazy, but Kraków is really booming right now. Kraków is home to Ryszard Krynicki, today's topic, who was part of the new wave of the late 1960s and has two collections that came out in English not too long ago. Our Life Grows, translated by Alyssa Vallis, and Magnetic Point, translated by Clare Cavanagh. His poems are often autobiographical, so we're going to save the biography for the discussion. But before we introduce today's guest, I'd like to remember a great poet who just passed away on July 20th, 2025, Urszula Kożuł, who was born in 1931. I find it helpful to organize poets, writers, composers, artists in my head by generation. So thinking about poets whom we have discussed on this program, if you recall, Czesław Miłosz was born in 1911. Tadeusz Różewicz was born 10 years later in 1921, and then Wisława Szymborska in 1923, and Zbigniew Herbert in 1924. And that makes Różewicz, Szymborska, and Herbert kind of a cluster. Kożuł was born in 1931, so she's somewhat younger, but she is squarely in the interwar period of independent Poland with the previous cluster. And then Krynicki was born during the war in 1943, and Adam Zagajewski in 1945 in Lviv after the Soviets liberated it from the Germans, but before the war had ended in Europe. There will be a test on this later. Just kidding. This is Urszula Kożuł's poem, Recipe for the Meat Course, written in 1963 and translated by Karen Kovacic in her collection of translations of Polish women poets, Scattering the Dark, published by White Pine Press in 2015. Recipe for the Meat Course. You need only a knife and a smooth stone. Caress the stone with the blade till the stone caresses back. The knife should be noiseless and its sheen supple to stiffen the resolve and steady the hand. The rest is easy. A stump for chopping, a pinch of salt. Greenery for the eye to savor, and laurel leaves. The rest is routine, because the whole art's in the seasoning. Don't forget the platter and colorful presentation. Cooking these days is no problem, thanks to Prometheus, as long as there's a knife and a stone. And a compliant neck. So, I'm delighted to welcome back Clare Cavanagh, Francis Hooper Professor of Arts and Humanities and Professor of Slavic Literatures and Comparative Literary Studies at Northwestern University. Her book, Lyric Poetry and Modern Politics, Russia, Poland, and the West, received the National Book Critics Circle Award in Criticism for 2010. She received a 2018 American Academy of Arts and Letters Award in Literature and a 2019 Zajks Award from the Polish Writers Union for her many volumes of Polish poetry in translation, including the work of Wisława Szymborska, Adam Zagajewski, and Ryszard Krynicki. Please check the introductory page linked in the description below to learn more about Clare Cavanagh's honors and distinctions and for a bibliography with links to the publisher's pages for Krynicki's work in English and some pointers to find some out-of-print editions. Clare, it's fantastic to have you back on the program to talk about your translations of Ryszard Krynicki.
Well, it's a total pleasure, David. I always really love this. I'm just sorry we can't do it on location in Hawaii.
Yeah, we have to figure that out sometime. Maybe we have to petition the Polish Cultural Institute in New York to work some kind of travel budget into this. I'm sure they'd be delighted to have a Hawaii office. So we'll look into that. So let's look at why don't we start straight from looking at some of the poems because so many of them are autobiographical, and then rather than sort of doing a biography separately, and then we'll explore. So would you like to start with this poem that you've called "Act of Birth"?
Well, I tried to actually, when I was editing the volume, and I talked a lot to Ryszard when I was doing it. Mm-hmm. I said we have to create this as a kind of poetic autobiography, and he understood instantly since he does so much editing work himself. Act of Birth, I have the Polish here in case I need to look at it, but I've done more than one version of this. So we set this up to be the initial poem in the collection. Act of Birth. Born in transit, I came upon the place of death, the cult of the individual unit of measures and weights, the military unit, progressive paralysis, paralyzing progress. Each day I listen to the latest news. I live in the place of death.
I think one of the big questions in that must be prevailing in translating Krynicki is this kind of wordplay that starts in this poem, because the akt urodzenia is also like a birth certificate, and in some ways the poem is his birth certificate. Perhaps maybe we should say a few words about his birth. And
well, that it was one of the difficulties of translating this, because you had to find act of birth certificate wouldn't have worked, because you need the multiple meanings of act in here as well. And since there can be an act of parliament or an act of Congress or something, I thought it would do as well. But what I wanted this at the beginning because born in transit refers to his own birth in a forced labor camp in Germany, where his parents had been.
In Austria, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. In Austria.
Yeah.
In Austria.
Nazi-occupied Austria.
Nazi-occupied Austria. His parents had been forcibly taken from there. They'd been from Western Ukraine, or what is now and hopefully will remain Western Ukraine. And they were forcibly taken to serve in a work camp, a labor camp. So when he says born in transit, in fact, he was born in transit in a sense and came upon the place of death. Again, the translation, I'm just looking at it now because it's what always happens with him. So few words on the page. And leaps you have to make from line to line and word to word and phrase to phrase, and how many meanings you can pack in compared to him. It's impossible to do as much as he does. Przypadło mi miejsce śmierci. The place of death happened to me, which we can't say in English. So came upon seemed to have the sense of accident. That's how I ended up with that. But it is a place of death. Of course, the labor camps, they weren't overt death camps, but it was disposable labor.
Right.
And then he has kult jednostki. Now that's really hard too. He's doing weights and measurements. He doesn't explain why, but Jednostka is also an individual. But you understand what's going on here. This is what, in a way, one way to read this would be, is that this is what he's growing into. He goes from one culture that's preoccupied with, not with human beings, but with individual units. How many units can we bring in? Of measures and weights. Measures works fine because it has more than one meaning in both languages. And weights, but he's also playing with physical measurement. And if the individual is purely a physical measurement, military unit, you just feel like, thank heavens that sometimes the words overlap. But he's born into one sort of military culture, military death culture, and then ends up coming of age in yet another militaristic culture.
It's a tank factory, isn't it?
It's a tank factory is what he grows up in, but it's also it's a tank factory that his parents are working in.
Right.
But it's also these non-human forms of measurement.
Right.
militaristic measurement where you're calculating the number of bodies you need to produce X number of tanks in X number of time, and the bodies are disposable. In the same, a screw wears out, you replace it.
Right.
Then this was pure luck that you could make the pun that it works in both ways. Progressive paralysis, paraliż postępowy, paralyzing progress. Well, now this seems to me we're already in People's Poland, where progress is the official progressive, and progress are code words for socialism, forward to the glorious future, whatever. But in fact, it's paralyzing.
Do we know when he wrote this one? I mean, his first collection comes out in 1969, but
collection, so it's from the 60s. I don't have the exact year because there isn't. What I'm always waiting for is those little S5E9 editions that give where everything is published. I actually have one of his underground editions up there on my shelf somewhere that I found accidentally in a book kiosk in Warsaw. I mentioned that in there, and gave it to Ryszard, and he corrected a mistake in it instantly. He knew the page. But each day I listen to the latest news. Here's another meaning I couldn't quite get, because we've moved into the present tense now. We started out having been born, which we have to use born, obviously, in English for that. Here, the latest news, ostatnie wiadomości, has the sense of like last judgment as well. There's something deadly or finalizing there, because he's still living in the place of death, which is partly partly it's about being human, because in fact, that's what we all do. But part of it is kind of establishing a continuity between the very strange and specific circumstances of his birth and where he is as this underground poet in People's Poland. 69. How old would he have been? He's
born in 43.
43. So really young.
Yeah. So he'd be somewhere in his 20s. We don't know exactly what year he wrote it in.
Yeah.
But we should sort of put him on the map of Polish poetry. He's part of the generation of '68. He's part of the Polish New Wave. We've had a few programs on the New Wave. We had one on the New Wave in general, and then we've done together segments on Zagajewski and Baranczak, with whom he was very close. We know that he dedicates many poems to Zbigniew Herbert of kind of the previous generation. So that's
but also to the Baranczaks. Also, I think there's one in here to Adam and Adam's first wife as well.
I think so.
Looking at who he dedicated, there's one to Julian Kornhauser, who was also the same generation.
Right.
So there's a whole generation at work here, and also in terms of the generation of '68. I'm going from memory here, so you may be able to help me out. But I don't know if he ever was able to officially publish. If any of his stuff came out officially, and I'd have to go back and double check on that. But what the school he's in, there are two opposing, not quite opposing, they're sort of collaborating, but from different angles. School. The straight speakers, which would be Kornhauser, Zagajewski, Krakow, and the linguistic poets. And of course, categories are always a bit arbitrary, but that would be Krynicki and Baranczak, who were in fact very close friends in Poznan.
Right.
Here, oblique speaking and wordplay in the total of 20, 30 words. This is what I think is one of the remarkable characteristics of Ryszard's poetry, is how he can do so much with so little.
Yeah.
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 And how much he makes the reader work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to like piece together gap by gap. The empty space is where you figure out how you got from there to there. And this poem is also about getting from one place to another, but the places turn out to be ominously similar.
Yeah, I like what you said in the introduction about him being all about the white space on the page. I mean that's very much. I mean, it's certainly more and more thematic, in his later poems, writing about nothingness and the Zen approach and all those things. Nothing becomes greater and greater. As he goes
on the page. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the poems get shorter.
And in the poems themselves. Yeah, and the poems.
Which one would you like to look at next? Would you like to look at folk etymology? I mean,
that's a late one, and I wanted to give that one.
Do you want to save that for the end, or do you want to do it together?
I'd like to do them together, just because it's in returning. What struck me going through this again is how much he returns to things, and either. One way to look at it would be unpacking, but another way would be dismantling. One thing that runs all the way through here is journeying. And here it's a journey that ends up in the same place by way of the whatever 17 words he puts there. This poem I used in the introduction a lot just because he does an extraordinary amount with almost nothing.
With so few words. I mean, I think you have about 2 pages on these 3 lines.
Yeah, because that's what it takes. So here we have the Austria during the war. We've gone back to what looks like an unpacking of the beginning. He's telling us where in Austria, when during the war. The first poem doesn't tell you that. Yeah. Okay, we're giving.
Well, why don't you read it?
I was born in Austria during the war, so my village schoolmates from Poland called me kangaroo. But usually for them, I was Ruski, Kraut, Jew.
And that's it.
That's it. But there's a lot here. That's I born in Austria during the war. Okay, we've gone back to what is the first poem in my version, and one of the first poems in his selected poems here. Mm-hmm. So my village schoolmates from Poland, which is italicized in both versions. And you think, well, what does that mean? We say Polish poet, duh, he's a Polish poet. But he was born in Austria, so he wasn't a Pole, and his family was from Western Ukraine. That's in another poem on the next page, in fact, in this thing. But he uses a word that apparently is self-evident to use Ukrainians. It's called Captain Nemo. He says, does anyone else still know the word bezodnya, pond? Well, God bless the internet. I was able to find it in Ukrainian. And then I asked a Ukrainian friend, I said, do you know the word? And she said, yeah, duh, of course. But it means he was from the margin that got taken away. And in this one, he just has the one little word as a place marker, as an indicator. And of linguistic disruption, which happens in this poem too, village schoolmates from Poland. So that automatically establishes he's not, in their eyes, a Pole. Which, again, becomes this kind of important thread. What does it mean to be a Pole that runs throughout the poems in various ways? Called me kangaroo. And you go, well, what? Of course, it's because they don't know the difference between Australia and Austria.
Even in Poland.
Well, this is going to be right after the war. Village schoolmates. I'd have to look up and see what it is in Polish, but I haven't got the page open right now. So you have a classic school dilemma of a kid being bullied for being different. Usually for them, he gets 4 identities in the space of 3 lines, and that's not including Austria. Ruski, okay, he's from the East. He ends up in the supposedly repatriated territories, the formerly German lands. But he's from the East and probably had an Eastern accent.
Yeah.
that he picked up from Kraut, born in Vienna, born in Austria, Jew. Well, why Jew? Because outsider, it's a generic marker for outsider. If you want to say somebody is not a Pole, what are you going to do? So he's ended up in this, he's gotten a whole complex, I don't know what to call it, geopolitical isn't right, but a whole compact history of displacement, childhood, coming of age, identity, 3 lines.
A wanderer. I mean,
and somebody who is not, where is he from?
Yeah. So who's essentially diasporic, right? I mean, that's, has no exact home entirely.
And it's one of my standard lines when I'm trying to explain in my Poland class. I say Poland is one of the places in the world where you can go into exile just by staying at home. You could be born a Russian citizen in Lithuanian territory, Miłosz,
right,
and be a Polish writer. You could grow up in free. The combinations are the amalgamations are just countless. Where you be from? He's from Ukraine. His parents are Polish speakers.
And it was Poland before the war.
Yeah. In interwar Poland, it was part of Poland. Yeah. So, but born in Germany because his parents were displaced by an invading force that turned all of these countries into other countries. It's just, I think he's quite astonishing with that.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the title, it's Etymologia Ludowa, right? So Ludowa has its own special meaning in PRL, in the communist
and folk etymology, and also that he's from the village, from the countryside.
Yeah,
he wasn't brought up in urban environments. He was brought up in villages. And, out of the way places. So folk gets all laden with all these meanings too.
Right. I mean, when we say folk etymology, it's usually kind of dismissive, right? I mean, it's like, that's just like some kind of urban myth, which is not an urban myth, but a folk myth. But, but of course the Soviets, valorized the folk and, in its own transformative way.
In its own, transformative is a polite word. Yeah.
Yes.
In its own mandatory way. So and the whole idea of what is Lud Polski is just way wide open here.
The tongue is wild meat is another really, I mean, it's a really crazy one. This one is dedicated to Mr. Zbigniew Herbert and Mr. Kogito. So you playing on Mr. Kogito. Of course, in Polish, of course, in English, we can use tongue to mean language, but in Polish, it's much closer. I mean, język, meaning tongue, is the normal word for language, whereas we use it kind of metaphorically or something like that.
Which is one of the problems with translation. You just have to weigh your losses.
Yeah.
But here, language is not going to be wild meat. And you were slightly fortunate in that tongue, the mother tongue, there are ways in which it still persists in English. So it's not completely off the record there. Okay, I'll read this one and then we can talk about it some.
Sure.
The tongue is wild meat that grows in wounds, in the open wounds of lips, feeding on truth belied. The tongue is a bared heart, a naked blade, it is defenseless, the gag that stifles uprisings of words. It is a tamed beast with human teeth. It is the inhuman that grows in us and outgrows us, the red flag we spit out with the blood, the split that engulfs us, the true lie that seduces, the child who learning truth truly lies.
Filled with paradox.
Filled with paradox, and one I hate even saying wordplay because part of what he's doing here is playing on the distinction between, or the relationship between language and the body.
Yeah.
And not letting us separate them.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been translating some early poems of Zagayevsky, and that the whole idea of not allow, and Baranchek has it too in early poems. You can't let the body be the language be exalted up there and the body be down here. There's that Baranchek poem about the rostrum where he introduces the whole soundtrack of noises that are, the water glugging in the thing as the person is rattling off his propagandistic nonsense. You need the body in here. And here the tongue is and one of the things I was trying to do in the translation is replicate some of the ways in which you have to speak the poem. Mm-hmm. Because he makes speaking the poem hard. Mm-hmm. It's one sentence, and it's clause after clause after clause. And I was trying to get some of the sound play. You can't replicate the sound play, but you can make it. You can get tongue twister into it, which keeps you being aware of how you're having to speak the poem using your mouth, Wild meat, wounds, bared heart, naked blade, but I tried to stifles uprising. I was trying to get some of that in here, but I don't even, it's funny. It's a poem. I feel like I get it, but it's hard to say what it is I'm getting.
Yeah. I mean, the opening line, I have it in front of me, is Język to dzikie mięso, które rośnie w ranie, right? I mean, that growing in wounds, rośnie w ranie is brilliant. And, and also those nasals at the beginning, język and mięso are,
Yeah. And the opening part sets
embodied.
It up as a really classic form of a poem, which is a definition poem. Mm-hmm. But it's defining two things in Polish. It's defining both speech and the language, tongue and the language, and language is inseparable from the tongue. So that articulation becomes part of what it is. Grows in wound, so wildness, woundedness, the lips, physical body as a wound, truth belied. So truth belied, here you start seeing generation of 68. What is that the tongue is speaking? Is it speaking truth, or is it speaking the truth that's been belied, that's been turned into a lie? Bared heart, naked blade, okay, they make it sound direct. Although bared heart gets a little creepy when you're looking at the tongue as wild meat in the body. Naked blade, it's defenseless. No, but it's a gag.
Yeah. It's meat and it's a muscle, right? I mean, mięso is also the muscle, right? So
maybe what he's doing, I mean, Stanisław was the one who was translating the metaphysicals here, but this strikes me as but the metaphysicals have their own tradition in Poland too, with like or something. You have these great paradoxes where it is both one thing and another thing, and they can't be bridged, and you can't even make it from one line to the next without having to pause, stop. Stifles what? A gag is what blocks your mouth. But uprising, so what he's apparently talking about self-censorship. A tamed beast with human teeth. So the tongue, why is it a tamed beast? Well,
that starts out wild.
Yeah, it's wild meat that gets turned into a tamed beast. So the physicality of the tongue is part of the animal world, which originally isn't fettered. It's wild meat. But with human teeth, well, why the human teeth? Suddenly the human teeth and the uprisings get a bit tied together. Teeth, you can block your tongue, hold your tongue behind your teeth. the inhuman that grows in us and outgrows us. Now, is that good or bad?
Mm-hmm.
Is it inhuman in the sense of the animal that grows in us because it grows in wounds?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a sense of physically growing and outgrows us.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it a power that goes beyond us, that suppresses us? The red flag we spit out, which is amazing, because we know what color the Polish flag is.
And he couldn't, that's one of the things he certainly wouldn't have been able to publish in the 70s or the 80s. Yeah.
And you think of all the idioms we have in English, which is the kind of thing you have to do when you're dealing with him and Bartek, is, bite your tongue.
Yeah.
I don't know all the idioms in Polish. This is, again, thank God for the internet. Every time I want to find idioms, you can get them now.
Mm-hmm.
Physical dictionaries don't have enough. The split that engulfs us, another we spit out with the blood. Okay, that's like you bit your tongue off, and that's why it's coming out with the blood. It's making it the split that engulfs us. So what divides us also overwhelms us, so that it goes with the idea of outgrows us.
Mm-hmm.
The true lie that seduces. True lie is a contradiction in terms.
Mm-hmm.
What is a true? Is it the lie pretending to be true, which would be language in People's Poland, which is what the generation of 68 was attempting to rise up against, come up with an alternate language?
Or is it the thing that's genuinely a lie?
Yeah. A lie pretending to be truth, or is it really a lie? And so you have seduce, outgrow, engulf, something larger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's us, too. I'm pretty sure it's in... Yeah. Yeah, plural. And plural is always really interesting to follow in the poems from 68, especially because you have a state that's claiming to speak in the plural. And then as the poets themselves kind of, as the literary critics say, auto-thematize, turn into a subject. What does it mean that we are trying to speak as a collective, the generation of 68, against the we that is the state? The child who, learning truth, truly lies. It's an amazing line. Learning truth. Where? Which truth? Truly lies because they're concealing the truth they learned, or truly lies because what they take for truth is the lie that they've been. Because learning, it's in
that they've been learning
at home. It could be in school. Which one is it? He doesn't let you, even syntactically, he doesn't let you take sides. You can't have a balanced sentence in here. Every snippet kind of works against what comes before it and what comes after it, or complicates it. Yeah, again, I find him utterly astonishing. And one reason it took me so long to get this volume done is because he's like a poet I had to grow into.
Well, what was it like working with him? I've asked you this before about other poets you've worked with, but I'm always curious to know. Some writers are overbearing, and some are hands off.
Ryszard overbearing is the last thing I would think of in terms of him. I started translating him with Stanisław. He was the first poet I ever translated from Polish, because I was Stanisław's research assistant, and he'd been asked, and this is another thing. I feel like I've spent my entire life trying to figure out what it was I was in the middle of before I even knew it. Bartek got stuck in Cambridge in 81. That's where they're after martial law, their passports were revoked.
Right.
I was just like trying to figure this. So Stanisław was asked to translate poems, the poems for a collection. The poems he was translating were the most recent ones, and those are the ones in Spoiling Cannibal's Fun.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the poems, little tiny gnomic poems that could be transmitted orally or written down on a scrap of paper. Part of the time, I mean, Ryszard himself was imprisoned at one point, or maybe more than once. I'd have to check. These were the poems. These were great poems as underground communication.
Yeah.
You could memorize them in no time. And so that's where he and I started, but I didn't quite know what I was translating yet. I had the world's best, tour guide with me on it. And I should also mention, too, that Stanisław said, and I remember it's not one of the poems I had on my list because I had to keep cutting, because I've lived with some of these poems for so long now.
Mm-hmm.
Really long, since early 80s.
Yeah.
And one of them, Stanisław taught us in class, and somebody else's translation.
I have this early edition, Citizen Arcade, does not live. Which is not all your translations, but
that's what we were asked to do it for. Yeah, that's right. And Stanisław didn't feel confident enough to do English translations on his own, and I feel like it's a mark of how nice all the poets I ended up working with were.
Mm-hmm.
That he thought I was capable of helping him. And again, there's no definitive edition of Ryszard. Even the selected poems, there's two different versions because his wife, the publisher, Krystyna Krynicka, they run the publishing house Opięć.
Which is an excellent poetry publisher.
Beautiful, and beautiful editions. But she put out an edition he wouldn't ever agree to it because he's such a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. So she put it out as a gift for him. And then he went through and did all the corrections, and they had to do another. There are two editions, and I'm never sure I got it from the right one or not, because you end up with so many editions of things. And this is another one where, in his tiny, oblique way, he managed to get in a lot of word play that took a long while. Pass it on, independent non-entities. Let's transmit the cloud's skyscraping script. We'll keep passing it from mouth to mouth. Well, another mouth image.
Yeah.
Independent non-entities. Let me look what that was.
Niepodlegli nicości. Podajmy dalej. Niebotyczne pismo obłoków. Podawajmy je z ust do ust. That's three simple lines.
Yeah, sort of like a quasi haiku before he goes back.
Which he also wrote.
Yeah. But I'm forgetting because I didn't go back and review everything, but niepodlegli nicości is the kind of thing he uses to describe the what he calls elsewhere the citizens of phantasmagoria. Independent, how did I do it here? Independent non-entities. That one I was pretty proud of because he's you have to make it as tight as possible. Mm-hmm. But independence and also nothingness tied together. Mm-hmm. And passing on the script of clouds from mouth to mouth. So this alternate mode of transmission is kind of built into the poem. And it is a poem that would work for that. And again, I didn't pull out I think I have my unofficial edition of one of his collections. It's Collective Organism is the title. Mm-hmm. I have it in a separate place because I keep those in plastic bags and stuff like that because they're not lasting.
Yeah.
But it has some of the same kind of, how do you get things through? Mm-hmm. And physicality, too. We'll pass them from mouth to mouth. We've already had the tongue. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like before I even read this one, I was thinking these short poems, they have to be underground literature written for memorization, like you said, and then here it is, exactly describing that, because if one remembers those days that people had underground editions and they would pass them around to their friends, and they would all read them multiple times, and they would be produced by usually women sitting at typewriters making 5 carbons, and
on horrible paper that's like construction paper, and stapled with an ordinary stapler, and it's sometimes a very nice cover design because you have a lot of unemployed artists. I really like translating them because you have to work so hard because he's so it's like quick change artistry, and you have to try and figure out like hell as a translator how you get from one line to the other. And this one I thought had brilliant wordplay, but I really loved it because it's daily existence. It's walking home from work. It's daily life in planet phantasmagoria of People's Poland. But what he's done with it.
Well, why don't you read it and then we'll talk about it?
Okay. The world still exists. Nothing changes. You wait each day for an apartment allocation. You wake up, the world still exists. You come back from work, the world still exists. You read the paper. The Chinese have discovered a bone that may revolutionize science and refute Darwin's theory. You go to bed, drift off before catching all the latest news. You sleep, dream nothing. You wake, your bones won't revolutionize science. You go to work along Red Army Street. The world still exists. Nothing has changed. Along the street's left side, depending on where you're headed. Along with the entire nation. Along the leftist side, along the street's ultra-leftist side, along its levitating side, along its far left wing, you see a slogan, the street's highest goal is man. Along the right, it's set. The slogan, the street's highest, you can't make out what's below. Raindrops, airplanes, snowflakes fall below. Nothing has changed. Cars slam the enigmatic letter ampersand into the asphalt. Time flows in immobility like an electrical current. But your child coming home from preschool already knows that the highest goal is etc.
It's going from bureaucratic language at the beginning and to something higher and higher and higher, and landing in real life. It's what it seems like to me.
And landing in etc.
Yeah,
because the world still exists.
Right.
And all this repeated activity. The Chinese have discovered a bone. Having spent my life doing 20th century Eastern Europe, you kind of recognize, of course, it has to be Chinese because it's a communist country. And the bone will refute Darwin's theory. Well, that's Stalin's old thing of, we're going to say that Darwin is wrong and that people evolve physically along with the social system. Catching the latest news, the news again, the news all the time. You go to work along Red Army Street, nothing has changed. And then he has a whole series of puns that, thank heavens, you can get them into English about the left side has been valorized. You can't say left without all the other stuff so you had to come up with and I just like, thank heavens for levitating, it gets that in there. It's far left wing. See a slogan, right? The slogan's highest. You can't make out what's below. The slogan is what you're physically seeing on the street, and it's been maimed. He has this other places too, where a letter drops out, the neon doesn't work, and the whole slogan goes haywire. That's something you recognize in Stanisław too, is what happens when the slogans are real language printed on a real poster or a real side of a wall.
A banner, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When in a dirty, slimy, muddy, snowy, dysfunctional world. Nothing has changed. Cars slam the enigmatic. I don't even know exactly what that is, except that maybe there was an ampersand that fell off a sign. I really don't know. I don't know. Or reflecting into icy. And here, once again, this is one of the little through lines. I know Ryszard's incredible and brilliant daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that this is her growing up there. And here we've had that thing about what you learn, your child, learning truths, learning, what is the line from the one we just read? Truth and lies.
Mm-hmm.
The highest goal is your child has already learned something. You're going through the same thing every day. She's learned something, but what she's learned is the infinite repetition that you've already just been through in the poem. The highest goal is blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And so what she's learned is non-knowledge.
Tell me a little more about what it was like working with him. And perhaps what it's still like.
He hasn't been writing for a while because every time I go over, I say, I feel like translating some more Ryszard Krynicki, and I don't get it. But
you don't get it.
But he doesn't know English. His German is fluent, and he's a beautiful translator from the German. I mean, I only read German in bilingual editions, but his Paul Celan, I think, is the one to beat between the English ones I've looked at and his German one.
Yeah, I've heard him read once at the Polish consulate in New York, and it was a very powerful reading. He didn't, and I recall that he didn't speak English.
No, he doesn't. He's really quick at picking things up. So he didn't ever try and interfere with the translations, which is not always my experience, alas. Mm-hmm. And he also seemed so extraordinarily grateful. Alyssa Vallis and I were both absolutely committed to publishing his poems. And Alyssa and I both felt like if we get them out in the same year, we're going to get more reviews.
Yeah, we also have Alyssa's edition here. Yeah. Unfortunately, I've asked her any number of times to be on the program. She hasn't been able to do it, but one day.
She and I both love his poetry. We the publishers were friends. They wanted them to come out because they did. I'm sure they got more reviews because there were two and he got more attention. It was more of an event. And so that was, he was so grateful for that. Mm-hmm. The other thing, so I used to ask him things when I didn't get something. And then I was really happy when I heard someone else, like one of his Italian translators, ask the same question. So I felt like, man, I'm not alone in not getting what line is doing. I asked his friend Tadeusz Nicek read a lot of my poems, who's also my friend, who knows his work inside and out. And I asked him questions, and he has good English. So I would ask him things, and sometimes he would say, you're not even going to do this one. Just forget about it. The level of punning is so intense and so specific here. You're just not, just skip that one. But if he said something was okay, I felt like, oh, yay. Well, if he said it was good enough, it's good enough. But Ryszard, I felt like I had Stanisław's imprimatur. Mm-hmm. And that for him kind of meant I was okay. But he's also the loveliest person. And knowing what someone is like and how they talk, and I've stayed at their house. I've been over at their house a million times. I've stayed over there a few times. It changes everything because he has snail poems. I think, one of the snail poems in there. It's one of small, vulnerable animals is another thing that runs all the way through poetry. And I recognize the voice of the poem from how he talks to his cats. How could I? What are you doing, little snail, on my balcony? So many floors above the ground. Are you coming back from Fuji? Oh, how could I not know you, Issa, at once? So he knows the snail from Issa's poems.
Right.
Japanese poetry. But he also...
Yeah, I found this one. Oh, snail, climb Mount Fuji, but slowly.
But slowly, yeah.
Haiku
this
from
one
Issa.
That he found it on the balcony. I'm sure it really happened because it's the kind of thing he would notice.
Yeah. They
live on the third floor. So how did the snail get? And this kind worried voice that he uses to talk to the snail.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get up here? What are you doing up here? With his cats, this is where I remembered specifically he had a cat he adored with good reason. It was a beautiful cat. But the cats would ransack his collection of musical notation. He collects musics. The cat would do, and I would hear him in the other room say, "Boo-boo, no, jak tak można, no boo-boo, proszę cię." You know, just like the never, with this love. And even the little snail, I'd have to check the Polish, but I'm sure it was a diminutive, or I wouldn't have put the little in.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Talking to the snail. So that's one real advantage from having known the person for decades. I met him at Stockholm when Szymborska got the Nobel Prize and was scared silly by the whole thing, but he's a lovely person, and he's such an elegant critic and such a beautiful editor. He writes, tiny notes to Herbert things or Szymborska things that anybody else, that would be their essay, that would be their book. But it's the same level of compression and understanding. And I say it should be an essay. He says, okay, no, just making a few comments.
Yeah, right. Very economical.
Yeah.
Do you want to look at Citizen RK?
Citizen RK doesn't live.
Right, which is another one of those things where if you use the idiom Citizen RK is dead, then you lose the enjambment into the next line.
Yeah, you can't do it because you need double meaning for life.
Right.
Jeszcze nie żyje. You can't do it anymore. And here, once again, I'm just looking at it. This is one long phrase in which every single comment is qualified.
Right.
And reading it, you're going to lose parenthesis, colon, semicolon, in quotes, colon, quote. The idea of an unqualified remark does not exist in this world. Like
we'll put the text up on the screen while you read. So
okay, great, yeah, great.
Like we always do.
And okay, I'll read this and then I'll make my one other comment. Citizen RK doesn't live. Citizen RK doesn't live with his wife or any other object that is his own. He doesn't live by the pen, by the indigestible fountain pen marked Parker that sticks in his throat. He's a sado. He gulps the ink that flows from the fountain pen marked Parker. Masochist. With this pen, he revives the corpses of days gone by so as to harass them. Born, he doesn't know why, into a worker's family, but just the same, he freeloads on speech. An honorary blood donor. Does foreign blood flow in his veins? Against our death penalty, he tried to struggle something across the border, a birth certificate, his collective organism, and a fountain pen, Parker. He doesn't jot down thoughts. He communicates telepathically. There's a snake in his telephone. And he corrupts underage wristwatches. To fall asleep, he counts to 1984. Isn't he counting on nothing? He lives, though it remains unclear whether he deserves such a life. It is so packed.
Yeah.
It brings up things we've already seen. I mean, Citizen RK, my son, who also never had any interest in poetry, got the references here right away. He said he's read Orwell. Well, yeah, he's lived Orwell.
Yeah.
Live with his wife. He doesn't live by the pen, next pun, and I'd have to look it up in Polish, but to live by your pen means you can earn a living by your pen. But that works as an idiom in English, thank heavens.
Right.
By the indigestible fountain pen, this one was hard to translate because, you couldn't get the entire. This one was hard to translate. Find me the one that wasn't hard to translate. Let's see. Pura, because together feathers struck in your throat makes even sense, but we had to do fountain pen because it's not a quill,
Yeah.
It's a Parker fountain. It's a brand name, and it's a foreign pen, which is interesting. And I think it's my friend, the editor Drinka Willen, who's originally from Serbia, said, "Will anybody in America realize how prestigious these pens were, to get one of these pens?" So he's saying that already. He is a Sado, but the masochism has to
come 3 lines later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of think he got that from Tuvim, right? I mean, Tuvim has that line in the middle of Balvopeja, the ball at the opera ball, Amba Sado Rovia, where Sado is on one line.
You're right. And he loved, and the other thing is he loved the 20s avant-garde.
Right.
I think he was a huge, I think it was Przybosh that he just really loved. He has a poem even with Przybosh in it.
He has a poem dedicated to Tadeusz Piper, I think.
Piper. Thank you. You've got a better memory than I do. But Piper, he loved so picking up a lot of the 20s Tuvim is an avant-garde, but that kind of, it's verbal and visual play.
Right.
Let's see. Gulps the ink. It's physical action again instead of writing, but I'm not quite sure. You can't digest the fountain pen, but you gulp the ink. I'm still thinking about that one. He revives the corpses of days gone by so as to harass them. With the pen, well, my first thought is a poet writing with a pen. So he's writing physically. He's making clear that this is he's established his identity as writer with the pen, though he doesn't live by the pen. Is you're bringing up poets of the past, revives the corpses of days gone by, or that's one thing that comes to mind, because that's what poets do, is constantly turn back to their precursor poets. That's the one thing that comes to my mind. I don't know if you have any other, because he does have things with pens and blood elsewhere, and that you use your ink to bring back vanished predecessor. That's one thought. Anyhow, Born. Okay, now we're back to the beginning again. He's bringing us back to his own early poetry here, into a worker's family. We're getting born into a worker's family. Well, his family was sort of landless peasantry, but that means they had to work, and we already know there was forced labor there.
Right.
He freeloads. Okay, this is an illegitimate poet. This is an unofficial poet. He's not freeloading on speech. He hasn't earned the right to the speech. He can't live by the pen. An honorary blood donor, here we go. Does foreign blood flow in his veins? Well, we've already seen the accusations of that. You're not a true Pole.
At the beginning, right.
Yeah, we're already up against that. Against our death penalty. So who is we now? This is interesting because he's talking about somebody who's self-identified, RK, but who's also a citizen, which means the title that you're given by the state.
Right.
And somebody else here against our death penalty. I'm assuming that's there in the Polish too, that I didn't take a bad liberty. Let me take a look.
Yeah, that one I don't have in front of me in Polish.
I wrote down all the things, although I hate going back and revisiting my translations and seeing the things I should have done. Nasze karze śmierci. Yeah, against our death penalty. So you have somebody else's voice in here defining what makes him an outsider in a poem that he's writing under the initials RK.
Right.
So he's inside and outside at the same time. Smuggle something across the border. Well, he got pushed across multiple borders. A birth certificate. We're back to akt urodzenia. Collective organism. That's the name of one of his collections. And I think it's the one I have over somewhere on my shelf in a plastic bag and a museum-proof little thing. And a fountain pen. Parker, of course, it's foreign. He doesn't jot down thoughts. He communicates telepathically. Now that, I don't quite know what it means, except that his writing, his words are being transmitted.
Mouth to mouth.
Mouth to mouth, mind to mind, and not through official channels. There's a snake in his telephone. Just weird, but you also think about phones being bugged.
Yeah.
You can't communicate through the phone. Corrupts underage wristwatches. I really don't know, but I love that line. If you have any thoughts, I'm up for it.
I was wondering about that one too. I'm not sure about that one.
But it's such a great line because this is an accusation being leveled against him by some fictitious person identifying this illegitimate citizen. And he's not corrupting any. I don't know what an underage wristwatch is, and I don't know how you corrupt it. But it's just I love that line. To fall asleep, he counts to 1984. Isn't he counting on nothing? Well, somehow we've gotten numbers in here. We've gotten 1984. That's a dead giveaway, and it's a dead giveaway that this poem did not come out in official channels if we needed it.
No.
He lives, though it remains unclear, bureaucraties, whether he deserves such a life. It's absolutely ambiguous on both ends. According to official things, he doesn't live by the pen. He's getting his thoughts transmitted illicitly, not through official channels. He's corrupting wristwatches. And he's a guest of the dead.
Could be a name. There are people who are named Zegarek. It could be a name because there are people who are named Zegarek. Is there some reference there? I don't know, but
I have no idea. I never met any Zegareks. That never occurred to me. But it's really strange because it's like the poem is like you're being eavesdropped on. But it's also the voice of the poet. And one thing it could be saying, what does it mean to have your own voice in a highly supervised, what's the word I'm looking for? Because we've got it here too. Where every move is being watched, where the media are controlled, where the telephone is controlled, where
surveillance society.
Surveillance, thank you. As Stanisław writes, the walls are thin, Collective housing is absolutely true, but also, somebody's listening on the other side. Does he deserve to even have this life? And I live in the place of death. We're getting meditations on what even the word life becomes profoundly ambiguous. In official terms, he doesn't deserve to be living unofficially. He doesn't deserve to be living off the books. He doesn't deserve to be freeloader. He may be, there are foreign influences there. He's suspect. But there's also, I think, a little humanist kind of plea in there. Doesn't he or any citizen deserve a different kind of life?
Let me ask you, what are you working on next?
Well, I'm still speaking of endless journeys, I'm still endlessly working on my Miłosz biography because I keep trying to do too many things at once.
Yeah. We all do.
I'm trying to slow it, or trying to cut out more and more. But right now I'm also finishing another project that makes me very sad. I I have to go back and do more of Ryszard's poems because this is, even though it's not insubstantial, it's still not all, thank heavens.
Yeah, we both have all the tabs.
Yeah. And I reduced my tabs for your sake, but still not enough. I'm doing Adam's collected poems in English now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I just finished doing, with Alyssa and Michał Ruszynek, we did a very substantial volume of selected poetry of Miron Białaszewski.
Right.
But I also did another project that I'm always behind on, but it's at Yale, the manuscript's there now. Anna Kamieńska notatnik. She has a wonderful notatnik. And that's finally done. It needs editing and cutting, but it's with the press now.
Wow.
I'll be really happy when that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't have another project. I want to do Baranchek. That's the other unfinished project is I started translating Baranchek's stuff and working with him, 9 million years ago. And I want to kind of, I feel like I have to get back to that. I have to.
Yeah, there's not enough in English for, because he neglected his own translations. He worked on other people's, translating other people's work.
It's not just neglected his own translations. I know from working with him, because we always had a plan to do a volume, but his illness,
Right, that too, of course, obviously. Yeah.
And then another thing he did, working with every translator is so different. He would rewrite the poems in English.
Right.
They're not the same poems. And then I would rewrite his rewritings, and we'd go back and forth. And the one that came out in the New Yorker after his death, Paul Muldoon, who Stanisław, I'm sure if his health had permitted him to, would have translated Paul Muldoon, because no one else on the planet could have translated Paul Muldoon into Polish. Mm-hmm. Another absolutely virtuosic, incredibly witty poet. Mm-hmm. Paul Muldoon and I went back and forth on the translation that Stanisław and I had done of a poem that's longer in English than it is in Polish. That's Stanisław's doing. Mm-hmm. And then working it out because he was so adamant about keeping rhyme and meter. And I am not John Donne. I kind of struggle. For him, that was what you did with your left hand when you were relaxing watching a basketball game. For me, it takes every ounce of my body, and then I feel like I need a vacation in Bermuda after I've gotten through one of the poems. So, right. But I'm just going to do whatever I can do. I'll see what I can do.
Right. Well, thanks so much for joining us again on the program. Hang on. Please subscribe and click the bell to stay on top of the program. Watch the credits for some recommendations about how you can support aid for Ukraine and for Ukrainians fleeing the war in their country. I'd like to thank all the people who helped make this series possible. The Polish Cultural Institute New York sponsors our program. Bartek Remisko, head of humanities and literature at the Polish Cultural Institute New York, is our executive producer. Natalia Iyudin is my fellow producer and editor. Our opening and closing music is by Radek Przedpełski. Thank you all for listening and reading along with us. Let's meet again in a month when we will be discussing the controversial life and work of Jerzy Kosinski, who Americans often know as Jerzy Kaczynski. See you then.
To szary dzień, jak zawsze w tej okolicy. Cała sceneria dodaje się chwilami fotografią z ilustrowanej gazety. Tak szare, tak płaskie są domy, ludzie i pojazdy.